Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. After 6 weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury rendered a unanimous verdict in the Michelle Troconis trial. She was accused of conspiring with her boyfriend Fotis to murder his estranged wife, her rival, Jennifer Dulos. Michelle helped Fotis tamper with evidence and then hindered the prosecution's attempts to track down the murderers. That was concluded by the jury when they rendered a guilty verdict on all counts against her. So we have the certainty of a jury verdict. We know what their decision will be. But even with the verdict, we are left with some bizarre facts that just were never explained and some very concerning questions that are just still unanswered. Tonight, we are going to look at 10 of the most disturbing questions that we still have. Some of them cast doubt on whether Michelle Troconis was involved. Some of them cast doubt just on what happened or on some other aspect, but all of them are bizarre and still unexplained. Most of them are not related to whether or not Michelle is guilty, but they are really significant questions that overshadow or at least cast doubt on what exactly happened. So it's a huge question and unbelievably important. One that I'm going to skip for tonight. Give me just a second. I'm double checking sound and everything. Well, I hope it's okay. I don't see anybody complaining. So hopefully we're all good. Okay. So there is one huge question that I'm not going to address tonight, and that's the overarching question of what happened to Jennifer Dulos's body. It's obviously hugely important. And initially, I thought I would make that just one part of the video I was going to do tonight, but it's just too big. It's too important for that. So Friday night, we will have a special edition show at 7 p.m. Eastern on the question, what happened to Jennifer's body? We are going to be looking at the facts we know and evaluating the theories about where Jennifer's body could be. I very much want your input. I'm going to be putting a question over on the community page that you can answer and give me your thoughts, your opinions about that, theories about that. What will be especially helpful is if you give me some of the facts you think that support your theory or your opinions. So Jennifer Dulos dropped her 5 kids off at school, and a neighbor's surveillance camera caught her vehicle headed home from dropping them at school. But that was the last time she was ever seen. By 7 p.m. that evening, the nanny reported her missing, and Connecticut police began the hunt for Jennifer or for her body. As the years passed and Jennifer never contacted her mother or her 5 kids, she was declared dead. So as we head in, let me ask you, would you hit the like button? It'll help the video get out to more people. And if you would also subscribe, we would love to have you back for more videos on the channel. We have an awesome community here, a lot of fun. And I want to thank the 5 people who were first into the chat that I saw: Beth A., Planetary Healer, Andy Mack, Connie Robledo, and Forever Red. Welcome. Glad you're all here. So here is the first, and I'm not going to say number 1, they aren't necessarily in an order, but here's the first unanswered question. How did Jennifer's phone connect with her vehicle at 2:56 p.m. on the day she disappeared? It's one of the most mysterious facts about the entire case. Under the prosecution's theory, Jennifer had been dead for hours by that time. They believe her body, that she was murdered in her garage in the morning, and her body was shoved into the back of her own Chevy Suburban. And then a neighbor's Ring camera captured the Suburban driving away from the residence at 10:25 a.m. Now, here's the video. You're going to see the vehicle drive back and forth. This is taken from a neighbor's house that was very near where Jennifer lived. And
the driveway area at the very top is where Wells Lane passes that residence.
Okay, and with respect to the numbers on the upper left hand, what is that?
That is the date and time stamp from the actual DVR unit or the unit. That is the date and time that the video was recorded.
Okay.
So 7:58 a.m.
Hit play.
And you're going to see the black Chevy Suburban. There it goes by very slowly. A mom with 5 kids, and she wants to be careful.
South.
Well, suburban.
So
And is there anything distinctive about that vehicle?
the wheels matched up on it, and there are also stickers on both rear quarter panels, passenger and driver side. And those decals matched up with the ones that were on her vehicle that we had impounded.
So Jennifer then returned to her house. She dropped the kids off at school and came back to her house. And the video camera, the neighbor's video camera, once again caught her vehicle, this time at 8:05 a.m. She lived very close to the school. We looked at a map of that, and she dropped the kids off, came right back, and you see the vehicle.
8:05 hours.
Okay.
I tried to cut it, which is why it's a little choppy. And there the vehicle goes back. She's a slow driver, or they haven't slowed down. I don't know which. And here's a second angle for the same thing, the vehicle coming back after the kids have been dropped off at school. So this is just after 8 o'clock.
Just going to
It's
pause
at
it. Please,
8:05.
sir. Again, the numbers on the top.
Let me stop it there. So you saw 2 different angles of the vehicle coming back. Then at 10:25, her vehicle leaves
Or left-hand
again.
corner.
That is the date and time the video was recorded.
And the timestamp,
10:25
please.
a.m.
10:25 and 6 seconds.
Thank you.
And there it goes again. And that was the last time that the video camera captured the vehicle. I'm going to switch this view a little bit. So that is what they believe is the time when Fotis Dulos drove the Chevy Suburban out of the neighborhood. They believe he was already at the house lying in wait for Jennifer when she got home from taking the kids, and he killed her. He cleaned up the scene, and then he headed out, and that it was Fotis, not Jennifer, driving the vehicle that we just saw, that she was dead by then in the back of the Chevy Suburban, along with Fotis's bike, and that Fotis was driving it. That's the last video of the Chevy Suburban until the police find it abandoned by Waveney Park after 7 p.m. that night. From a school bus camera, investigators knew that the Suburban had not been there at 7:58 in the morning. So let me show you. Prosecution. Oops. Nope, that's not it. I'm going to have to share my screen with you. Give me just a second. I will share the screen with you. There it is, but I've got to go back to the school bus view. This is the school bus view that we actually didn't get to see during the trial, so it's nice to be able to see it. The reason they didn't show it at trial is because they weren't able to cut out the views of the children, but for one picture during closing argument, they went ahead and gave us a picture. You can see the red Chevy Suburban that was captured on the school bus as it passed by, and the kids are all turned away, so they didn't have any trouble showing this publicly at the closing argument, and that's why we can look at it now. But you can see that there, the Chevy Suburban was just parked in a cutout along the side of Waveney Park, and that's where, near where the police found the Chevy Suburban. The black Chevy Suburban was found near there later in the day. They were only about 100 feet apart, in fact, from where the two were parked, based on what that school bus shows and based on where the Chevy Suburban was actually found. So the prosecution did not offer any evidence or information, and I assume they didn't know, about where the Suburban was between 10:25, when it leaves Jennifer's neighborhood, and when it was discovered after 7 p.m. that evening. And meanwhile, the police believed that Fotis drove that red pickup truck that you just saw from Farmington, which was where he lived. He drove it down to New Canaan, where Jennifer lived. He murdered her. Took about an hour and a half to get to New Canaan. He murdered her, and police believe they captured that footage of the red pickup truck while he was in New Canaan in order to murder Jennifer. Here is a timeline. Let's see if I can find the timeline. Here we go. Here's the timeline of the truck as police believe it happened. At about 5:25 a.m., I had several different numbers written down in my notes, anywhere from 5:22 to 5:27, which is what was actually shown on the video camera. That's about when the truck began its journey, and they have their first video footage showing it all the way up in Farmington. You can see it comes down. It was captured at some rest stops along the way. At 7:03 a.m., it was passing the New Canaan rest stop. And then you can see it go back. It headed back up to Farmington at about 11:12. So that's about how much time was available. Jennifer was believed to be alive at 8:05. At 10:25, when the Chevy Suburban left the neighborhood, the prosecution believes she was already dead. And then at 11:12 a.m., the vehicle begins the trek back to Farmington. So that's what the police believe happened in terms of timing. And so what that means is that Fotis, as you can see from the map, was back in Farmington by 12:22 p.m. If he's driving the red pickup truck, he's back in Farmington at 12:22 p.m. So that makes it all the more puzzling. How is it possible that Jennifer's phone connected to her Chevy Suburban at 2:56 p.m.? How could that happen? Because if Jennifer's dead, presumably something's either been done with the body or it's back in Farmington by now, and yet her phone connects to her Chevy Suburban. A detective explained during the trial that a phone connects with a vehicle when it's brought near it. So that means her phone was near her vehicle, which was down in New Canaan. So the prosecution speculated, well, maybe the phone or at least a witness did, maybe a phone had connected to a family member or to maybe the nanny's phone, but the defense pointed this out. Let's head back into the video.
But there was a question raised about whether or not that Bluetooth connection of the phone belonged to Jennifer Dulos, or maybe it was the kids, maybe it was Lauren Almeida. But at this time, at 2:56 p.m. in the afternoon, when that Bluetooth connected to her Suburban, they were long away in New York City. So we know it's not them. But we have more than that. We have the Stratford police research that shows, if you look to the right there, that there were two numbers associated with Jennifer, one being the 604 number and the other being the 499 number. And you will see that it's the number down at the bottom is that 5C number. It connects to the 499 number.
So the phone data showed clearly that Jennifer's phone, it was Jennifer's phone that connected to her vehicle in the afternoon when she was dead and when Fotis was nearly 100 miles away. It's baffling. There is simply no explanation for it, unless maybe someone else was involved, either as well or in addition to Fotis or even besides Fotis. To me, this is one of the pieces of data that could suggest that Fotis wasn't alone when he murdered Jennifer, or at least when he disposed of the body. But in any event, it's simply not explained. We don't really know the answer to this, and I find it one of the most puzzling parts of the entire case. I have a few people to thank too. I want to thank Sid very much for the super sticker. Thank you. And Mitspunky, thank you as well. I appreciate it. And I'll go through and thank everybody. Oh, Harley, thank you very much, Harley. I appreciate that. So the second question I want to ask is, where is the bike? Because the police believe that Fotis parked his truck, as you saw it right there beside Waveney Park, and pulled a bicycle out of the bed of the pickup truck. He then pedaled over to Jennifer's house, which would have taken roughly half an hour, maybe a little less. And he killed her, and then he put her body and the bike in the back of her Chevy Suburban and drove it out of the neighborhood. That's the video that we saw. Now, let me show you a map that shows you sort of the layout of where things were to give you an idea. The Toyota Tacoma, that red pickup truck, you can see the arrow pointing to about where it was versus where Jennifer's house was. And so he would have had to have ridden about that far on his bike. Certainly not a difficult thing for an athlete such as he was, but that would have been about what he would have had to have done in order to take the bike. Now, law enforcement believed he was riding a bike he'd owned since childhood. They found a torn piece of paper with Tour de France on it stuck to the duct tape in the bags that Fotis threw out and dumped in Hartford, Connecticut, the evening of the disappearance of Jennifer Dulos. But it proved really difficult for law enforcement to sort of pin down the evidence about what the bike's role was in the murder. They threw in, and I'll show you some examples, or an example, sort of some grainy footage of somebody on a bike. It's really, and it almost looks like the person's walking, but if you saw the video, you can tell in the video that law enforcement showed that it was somebody on a bike. That definitely could have been the case. It definitely could be that that's Fotis, but obviously you can't tell from this distance. You can't tell really anything about the bike or the handlebars or about the person who's on the bike. So there was also no video footage that would show Fotis arriving on Jennifer Street. And that means, whether by bike, whether he was on foot, whether he was in a car, there just was nothing that was shown that would tell us how he got to Jennifer's house. Somebody must have been at Jennifer's house because she disappeared, but there was nothing to show us how that happened. It could well be the neighbor's camera caught the Chevy Suburban leaving and showed Jennifer going back and forth to the kids' school. But so there could have been some things like Fotis could have stashed the bike somewhere and then walked the rest of the way to Jennifer's house. And it could be that the camera was motion activated and it didn't pick up just a person walking by. That wasn't enough motion for it to activate. It could be that that was true for a bike too, that a bike was not enough to activate it so that it turned on. And that's why then there wasn't any footage of that. Now, law enforcement also showed us this photograph sort of blown up of what they believe to be the red pickup truck. This was taken from a rest stop on the way back from New Canaan to Farmington. And you can see in the back of that vehicle, there is a round object that could easily be a bike wheel. Very possible. Obviously, it's at a distance, so the jury had to make a decision for itself what, if anything, they thought that was. Michelle then said she saw that bike at 80 Mountain Spring the afternoon that Jennifer disappeared, but the police never found it. So would Fotis have used and then destroyed a bike that was so important to him that he had it since childhood and had toted it halfway around the world with him? And if he didn't, where is the bike? What happened to that bike? So the third question I want us to think about is, according to the state, Fotis left for the murder at 5:22 a.m. Remember, 5:22 to 5:27, and he left from his work site where he was building a residence at 80 Mountain Spring. So the question is, why did he leave from his work site if Michelle knew this was happening? Why not just leave from his own home? Pavel Gumiany was his longtime employee, and Pavel typically parked his old 2001 Toyota Tacoma at the 4 Group office, which was in Fotis's home. It was a home office. And he parked there during the week, and he would pick up one of the trucks the 4 Group owned during the week. He'd drive that back and forth wherever he was going with work. And one of the places he was assigned to work was New Canaan, where they were building a residence down near in the city where Jennifer had moved to. That was an hour and 20 minutes or so south, and of course, where Jennifer lived as well. On the weekends, Pavel would then take his truck home and then start the process over again on Monday morning. The truck became a very important issue in the case. But the night before Jennifer disappeared, Fotis Dulos got Pavel Gumiany to move his red Toyota Tacoma from Fotis's home to a home they were building at 80 Mountain Spring. Pavel said he assumed it was because his old Toyota Tacoma was leaking oil. So he just wanted to get it out of the house and out of the area where it would mess up the garage there at the property at 4 Jefferson Crossing. But the prosecution strongly implied that Fotis left from 80 Mountain Spring, that he intentionally had Pavel move the truck down there so he could leave from 80 Mountain Spring the next morning instead of leaving from his house. But here's the question: who was he hiding from? Because if Michelle was in on the whole plot and she and her 12-year-old daughter were the only two people at Fotis's home, then why bother to leave from somewhere else? Why not just leave from his own home? And this is a sincere question. I really wondered about this as we were trying the case. And if Fotis was trying to throw law enforcement off, if what he was trying to do is leave from somewhere different so they wouldn't pick up on what he was doing, why would he pick his own work site to leave from? Because, of course, that is one of the very first places that law enforcement went and looked. And let me take a quick break, and I have some people I want to thank. I want to thank Sammy G, who wants to know about what trials we're going to be covering. And Sammy, that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it toward the end. And so, I did not know that the judge had granted live stream in Daybell. That's huge. That's really important. I'll mention that at the end too. Thank you for letting me know that. And we will talk about all of that toward the end. So, and I want to make a note too. I know that I would say, just based on sort of polling that I saw, probably 70% of people felt like the prosecution had proven its case that Michelle was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of conspiring to murder. That, I want everybody to understand, I did a whole video about that evidence and about the evidence that was against Michelle and that I felt like the jury had relied on when it concluded that she was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So if that's how you feel, you can go watch that video. And I went through all of that evidence and sort of laid out what I thought were the key reasons for that. At the same time, it's true that something like 25 or maybe 30% of people felt like that it was not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And I told you at that time, I'm going to do both sides. I'm going to try to show you both sides. So in this one, I'm trying to do a cross between showing you some of the things that supported Michelle's case and also some of the things that simply weren't answered, probably because they cannot be answered. Literally, the prosecution doesn't know and has no way of knowing. But it's important to think through these things because they remain questions. They could be questions that lead to reasonable doubt, or they could just be questions that we have that we'd like to know the answer to, but recognize that we don't currently know the answer to that. So let's go on to question number 4, which is, how did Fotis get back and forth from 80 Mountain Spring to 80 Mountain Spring from his house? Because the prosecution showed us as that red truck pulling out of 80 Mountain Spring at 5:22 in the morning and then arriving back again at 12:22, apparently having made that trip to New Canaan. But if Fotis was driving the vehicle, how did he get to 80 Mountain Spring in the morning before 5:22? And assuming he drove a car, why wasn't that captured on the neighbor's camera? One possibility could be that it was pretty dark. Maybe at the time he got there, there wasn't enough light for the neighbor's camera to get activated. But that wouldn't explain why there's not a photograph or video of Fotis pulling out of Mountain Spring after he arrived at 12:22. Here is what the prosecution showed us. Let me go ahead and so the prosecutor showed that he arrived. I'm getting dizzy going back and forth. Let me go ahead and show this. Okay, I see where we are. Hold that thought. Let me not show you that. And instead, I'm going to show you this, the slide. I was trying to decide slide video. Okay, slide. This shows you can see in the very upper right-hand corner, just barely, the red pickup truck, and it's about to turn into 80 Mountain Spring, the house. You can see it just in that very corner there. You can get a little hint of it. And you can see from the time that it was 12:32, and we were told that the clock that on this particular camera was a little bit off. So I believe 12:22 is about when it pulled into 80 Mountain Spring. So it's approximately that time. Okay, so we know that if Fotis is in the red truck, Fotis is in the red truck at 12:22 p.m. And we don't see, and the prosecution never showed us, a vehicle leaving 80 Mountain Spring. And yet, this is what we saw. And now I will hopefully add the video. Yes, here we go.
For running. Okay.
So Fotis in the white car
There
going to 80
is-
Mountain
He
Spring.
called me like at 1:50 something, then he calls me like at 3.
Well, let me just tell you that at 1:33, Fotis is driving to driving to Mountain Spring. And by
And here's Michelle
1:36, you guys are both arriving.
right after him.
Okay, so I went with the training stuff.
Okay, but you went with him.
So, and what you just saw was an excerpt of what was played during the closing argument when the prosecutor pointed out that Michelle had initially told the people who were interrogating her that she didn't go over to 80 Mountain Spring that afternoon until Fotis called and asked her to come. She didn't go until he actually requested that. But the people doing the interrogation were able to tell her, no, actually, we have video of you following right behind him. He went into 80 Mountain Spring and you followed right after him. But that means somehow between 12:22 and the time when this video was done, that at 1:36, he had gotten from 80 Mountain Spring to their home in Fort Jefferson Crossing, because now he's coming back. So somehow he got there. How? I don't know. I was really curious. How did that happen? I wanted someone to tell us during the trial because I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out how exactly that would have happened. Could he have ridden his bike? Well, maybe, yes. Although he would then have had to put it back into his car because Michelle then said she saw the bike at 80 Mountain Spring. So he would have had to have taken it back over to 80 Mountain Spring. That's possible. That could have happened. Maybe that's how it worked. Or if Fotis wasn't driving the Toyota Tacoma pickup, well, who was driving it? Because the prosecution was very certain it was Fotis himself. So quick question number 5, or question number 5, I should say, unanswered question number 5. What the heck was the I'm Naked group chat about? One of the strangest facts that came out at trial was a message that Michelle Troconis sent to a group chat at 4:16 p.m. on the day that Jennifer disappeared. We weren't given any context for this. It just popped up out of the blue and was just bizarre.
Both driving into the driveway together. Like,
All right, this isn't quite finished. Give it a second.
How we went together?
So you say, well, Attorney McGinnis, that was just an innocent memory lapse, no harm, no foul. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that.
So this is an incoming instant
Here,
message sent at 4:16 and 24 seconds p.m. From Michelle Troconis, and this appears to be a large WhatsApp group chat.
And the description?
The description says, now one naked. There's an emoji. It looks like a winking face with a tongue sticking out. And again, the source was WhatsApp.
And it was sent to all these people?
Correct.
Now, a group message saying I'm naked. What on earth was that about? Like, what kind of group was this anyway? I was frankly a little surprised that the court let this into evidence. I didn't hear any argument on this topic, but I'd be willing to bet that maybe even before trial, the defense opposed this. The prosecution probably argued that the message was relevant because Michelle told law enforcement that on that same afternoon, Fotis and she had been fooling around sexually on the passenger side of the Tacoma, which was especially concerning because law enforcement believed that Jennifer's DNA, blood were on that side of the vehicle, which would suggest that either her body or some materials from the murder were carried on that side of the vehicle. So Did this text message have anything to do with what Fotis and Michelle were doing on the afternoon that Jennifer disappeared? We honestly have no idea. It was never tied together with any of the facts of the case at the trial. So it's just a question left in the air. All right, number 6, the shirt being cut up the front. What was that about? One of the most disturbing facts in the entire case had to do with the blood-soaked bra and shirt that were found in the Hartford trash and that tested positive as it tested for Jennifer's DNA. And they were sliced right up the middle, both the bra and the shirt. So here is what was said at trial.
Is this the item that you pulled out of the garbage of Albany and Green on May 30th, 2019?
It is.
Is that a photograph of the shirt that you took out of the garbage on May 30th, 2019?
It is. The front was cut.
So is that the front?
It is.
Okay. I'm going to show you. It's 61, I believe. May, sir, can you please point to where the shirt is cut?
It's almost right down the center of the shirt.
Did you have an opportunity to?
So the cuts were straight. They were clearly intentional, but why? As Utah wrote me and asked, why was it necessary? Or why did it fit into Fotis's plan to remove the clothing? And where are the rest of the clothes? Were they thrown out somewhere else, maybe in New Canaan or maybe in Hartford on some stops that just weren't captured on video camera? And so I wonder about that. I still wonder about what on earth that was necessary for. Why did that happen? So number 7 question is, if Fotis and Michelle were disposing of Jennifer's body at 80 Mountain Spring, why was there no evidence of it? Michelle and Fotis spent all afternoon at 80 Mountain Spring, and Michelle brought cleaning supplies, which seemed very suspicious, and she brought them at Fotis's request. She went back and forth from her house to 80 Mountain Springs 5 times. Even though it's only a 4-minute drive, that's a lot of times to go back and forth in one afternoon. And in one of the intervals, when she was back at her house, she burned something in the fireplace. But police absolutely scoured the home at 80 Mountain Spring, and they came up with exactly nothing. They brought in dogs and equipment and even looked in the septic tank, and they got nothing. Now, let me show you the house because it's huge, okay? It's huge. It would be easy to miss something. But law enforcement was actively looking very hard to find any kind of evidence, and they didn't find anything. They didn't find DNA of Jennifer. They didn't find blood. They didn't find signs of a body being buried. And Fotis was apparently so confident that there wouldn't be any signs of a crime in his house that the next day he gave the code to the house to a real estate agent to take her clients by to see it because the house was for sale and they were interested in having a house built that was at least by Fotis and had some similarities to what he built. He didn't even go with the agent and her client for, say, a last look to see if he needed to hastily remove something he'd forgotten to clean up. So why were there not any signs at 80 Mountain Spring? And given that there weren't, what was going on there all afternoon? Because they spent all afternoon there and they went back and forth and they took cleaning supplies. Was this simply cleaning up for the showing the next day, like they said? Or was there something more sinister? And if so, what? What exactly was happening there? Let me say thanks to a couple of people. Tom, thank you. I appreciate it very much. And Willow, thank you both. I appreciate that. All right. So question number 8. Why didn't law enforcement test the fireplace? And if Fotis and Michelle were burning evidence that afternoon, why didn't they burn Jennifer's clothing instead of throwing it away intact in Hartford? So during the afternoon, after Jennifer disappeared, Michelle shuttled back and forth to 80 Mountain Spring 5 times, but the prosecution stunned the courtroom by showing that on one of the times she was back at her home, Ring camera footage from the neighbor across the street showed smoke coming from the chimney at Michelle and Fotis's house. Twice on one of her visits back to the house. It was a warm, and I'll show you the picture of that. I've got it circled there where you can see the smoke coming out of the chimney. Well, the prosecution says this is a warm day. It's late May. It's May 24th. It's Memorial Day weekend. Why are you having a fire in the fireplace? And the neighbor's Ring camera footage showed that Michelle and Fotis had another fire later in the day before they left for Hartford. Michelle and her friend, Clara Duperon, said, well, this was common. Michelle often lit fires in her fireplace. She did it at all seasons. But the prosecution said, well, that's nonsense. No one has a fire on a warm day in May. And they implied that Michelle was destroying evidence. So why didn't they test the fireplace for DNA or for items that had not been fully burned? Because police combed the house, but no one testified that police ever tested the fireplace or even looked at it. Perhaps the fireplace had been cleaned, maybe even with bleach, and so they thought that wouldn't yield any evidence, although the fact that it had been cleaned like that could be evidence just in and of itself. And maybe they felt like the burning would eliminate the DNA, and so they thought there wasn't any reason to look. But although I did look it up, and burning in a fireplace is not going to destroy bone, I wondered about that. So they couldn't have been burning a body. It couldn't have been anything like that. I'll probably get investigated for doing this search on the internet about whether bone burns in a fireplace. But the answer is no. And now you don't have to do the search and get nabbed by the FBI for that. But maybe law enforcement figured, that finding Jennifer's DNA in the fireplace in a home where she lived for many years wasn't going to prove anything. So, but as thorough as they were, I was just surprised that no evidence was presented to sort of fill in that gap for us and explain why they didn't look at the fireplace, or if they did, that they didn't find anything there. Question number 9, and now there's a spoiler alert. I actually have 11 because I couldn't chop it down to 10, but I thought 10 sounded better for the title. But now you have 3 more to go. So question number 9, why would Fotis murder Jennifer if things were going better in the contempt proceeding? Now in April, things had been very bad for Fotis in the custody. He had had no visitation for a time, and then only supervised visitation. Michelle and her daughter were not allowed to be in the presence of his children if he had them. But in April, he became convinced that the custody dispute battle was turning his way. A psychiatric report came out, and he seemed to believe it was the turning point. So in her second interview, Michelle told law enforcement that Fotis was claiming it had information in there that suggested Jennifer had psychiatric problems, and Fotis thought he was going to get at least joint custody, if not full custody. It wasn't just Michelle who said that. Who said that Fotis was really happy about the outcome of the report. We heard that from Fotis's friends. We heard it from his attorney. We heard it from the guardian ad litem who was representing the children in the custody dispute. All of them said Fotis was really happy and excited. So the prosecution believed that this is what happened. Now the defense said, if things are going well, why would Fotis pick this moment in time to murder Jennifer? Because he's not going to have to. It's all going to go his way. The prosecution's answer to that was that Fotis had become discouraged, that there was a good report in his view that came out in late April, but then there was another hearing and nothing changed. However, Fotis's attorney said he encouraged them that these things take time, but that there was every reason to be encouraged. So the question just remains, why did he do this? What was his thinking if things were about to go well for him as he was busy telling people? And the fact that Michelle put this up on her screen in the courtroom, risking and perhaps getting contempt charges as a result, she's going to be she is going to be actually facing contempt charges, suggests she still thinks that report is useful and that she thinks it supports Fotis's idea that he was going to get custody, or at least more custody. So the next question I have is, what about the DNA for the unknown people that was in the trash bags that Fotis Dulos threw out in Hartford, Connecticut? And I want to thank Pharaoh Gamma for reminding me. He wrote me and reminded me of this one. It's a really important one. And it, of course, makes sense that there would be DNA of random strangers in a public trash can. But this DNA was found on the inside of the bags as well, along with Jennifer's, Fotis's, and even Michelle's DNA. So you'll hear the witness. I'm going to play a little clip for you, and you're going to hear the witness talk about a toothbrush. Since Jennifer was missing, law enforcement pulled a DNA profile from her toothbrush. And so that's what they're talking about. The toothbrush represents Jennifer's DNA. So let me flip over to that and play that for you.
Do a DNA analysis on that particular swabbing?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 883S7 being a mixture of 4 contributors, with at least 2 of them being male. Assuming 4 contributors, the DNA profile from 883S7 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown individuals. In assuming 4 contributors, the DNA profile from 883S7 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fotis Dulos and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown individuals. Assuming 4 contributors, the DNA profile from item 883S7 is at least 780,000 times more likely to occur if it originated from Michelle Troconis and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown individuals.
So who were these unknown people? Are these just people who threw trash away in that same trash can? Are they other people who had used the cleaning supplies? Or were other people involved? Or were other people involved in the murder of Jennifer Dulos, or maybe in disposing of her body? Which leads us to the question about the DNA. It leads us to the question we're going to answer in the next video. Not answer, we're going to talk about in the next video. What happened to Jennifer's body? What facts do we have that help us figure out what happened to her body? Now, it's never been found, so we're not going to uncover the body itself, but what can we reason through and figure out where it is or it isn't? What are the facts that relate to that? So the 11th bonus point that I want to give you is, what were the altered license plates all about? On that trip around Hartford, throwing trash bags from the back of the pickup into random street trash cans, we saw Fotis carrying a white envelope, and he bent down and apparently chunked it into the sewer system. Let's take a quick look at that video. You see the door of the pickup truck open, and in just a minute, Fotis will get out. He opened once, closed, and then opened again. When he gets out, watch what he has in his hand. He has a white, and it's going to turn out to be an envelope. You can see it there as he puts his hand down. You see Michelle lean out of the car. She's in that controversial something with her gum. We won't get into that tonight. And you see the white slip of paper as Fotis bends down to throw it in the sewer grate. And now he's going to come around, get back in the side of the car, and they drive off. So let's remove that. We'll make this large. And so Law enforcement was way too fast for Fotis Dulos because they found that envelope. In fact, I'm going to show you the envelope that they found because this is it. They found it in the sewer, and inside were 2 license plates. In Connecticut, you have a front and a rear license plate, but they found a really odd puzzle because when they ran the number you see there, 5T6WBU, they didn't find any match in the system. That made no sense. These are real metal license plates with embossed letters from the state of Connecticut. They look well used. How could they possibly not be in the system until somebody realized, hey, wait a minute, Connecticut license plates don't start with letters. So they examined the plates more closely and realized that someone had cleverly altered them with duct tape. So here you can see when it was removed, the actual number was 516WDJ, and it had been altered it had been altered to change how it looked so that theoretically anyway, somebody couldn't trace it. And they ran the true numbers and found, sure enough, they were old plates issued to Fotis Dulos. So clearly these plates are important enough to go to the trouble to alter the look so that the plates would look real but still be untraceable. But how did they figure in? How are they used? I was so curious. They analyzed the plates for fingerprints, other evidence. They analyzed the front and rear plates on the Toyota Tacoma, but they just came up with nothing. In the case of the Toyota Tacoma, maybe because of the fact that the car was washed by Fotis and Michelle at the Russell Speeder car wash. So all of those are just really curious questions that we never fully got an answer to, things that remain mysteries within the case. There are 2 questions so big, I think they deserve their own videos. The first, where is Jennifer Dulos's body, as I've said? And the second, what did Kent May Winnie have to do with anything? So be sure to subscribe with the notifications on so you'll know when those videos are going to go live. And if you would, go ahead and put your questions in starting now. And then I am going to, and I'll go ahead and pull that out and go ahead and be larger so I can talk to y'all again. So and I forgot to say, if you have a question, if you would put a question mark at the front, it makes it a lot easier to spot. I looked through looking for question marks at the beginning, more than one, if you would. So I want to talk for just a minute about what's coming next, because many of you have been asking. I am so glad to get the comment that I did related to the Chad Daybell case from Sammy G, who asked about covering the Daybell trial. We covered in detail the Lori Vallow Daybell trial, and one of the handicaps for that was that it was real difficult to cover without access to the video of the trial. I am delighted to know, I knew Chad Daybell had requested video for his trial, and so apparently Sammy is telling us the judge has granted that. That's fantastic and will make it much easier to cover. I think April 1 is the date set for that, and I definitely would be interested in covering that. I found that case absolutely fascinating. But I would like input from you. What are the cases you want to hear about? Let me tell you about some of the things I'm thinking about covering. For the next 2 weeks, Ethan Crumbley's dad will be on trial, James Crumbley. It's one of the most controversial cases of our day. James's son, Ethan, shot and killed 4 students at his high school and is in jail for that, in prison for that. And now James is accused of involuntary manslaughter. His wife was recently convicted of the same 4 counts, actually convicted of involuntary manslaughter. There are some other cases that I'm considering. The Karen Reed case, absolutely fascinating case where many people believe Karen Reed is being set up by the police department as the murderer of her boyfriend, who was himself a police officer. That case probably is going to get put off. It's supposed to be tried on April 23rd, but it's probably going to get put off because both sides have asked for a delay. The Shanna Gardner case, super interesting, very like the Adelson case, but that probably is not going to be going to trial anytime too soon. I have not been able to find a firm trial date set at this point. The Delphi case, absolutely fascinating. You know, I'm fascinated by the Richard Allen Delphi murders case. That is more difficult to cover because the judge has not put the pleadings in the public domain. She's kept those off the normal way you could access the pleadings. And she has said she's not going to televise the next hearing that they're going to have. So it is more difficult to get information on that. Corey Richens, fascinating case. We've covered a great deal of that. I expect to cover it again, but there's not a trial in the next few months. Chad Daybell, we just talked about, and Donna Adelson, her trial could be coming up in the next few months. Wouldn't be surprised. Lori Vallow Daybell has another trial coming up in August, and that obviously will be interesting. I would like to know, what are your thoughts? What are the cases that you really want to hear about? I also want to say a thank you to Patriotiac and Denise, who both sent me articles or information this week. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I may have left someone out. My apologies. I really like all the information that y'all send me. It is very helpful, and I appreciate it. All right. So let me pop over and see what questions we have going. I'm going to go back to, I don't know, 7:49 maybe. See if yeah. May have been a little before that. All right, here we go. Lots of questions. Annie K. So much evidence could have been lost and destroyed during the time period before law enforcement really investigated. Is this not a surprise? So, and I think what Annie is asking me is about the fact that law enforcement for some things didn't jump right in there. I will say this. The Connecticut State Police did a commendable job here. It is absolutely mind-boggling to me that they managed to find videotape of that evening when Fotis Dulos and Michelle Troconis rode around town and were throwing out the trash bags in Hartford. That's incredible that they were fast enough not just to do that and get the videotape before it got taped over, but also to actually get the trash bags. Unbelievable. Nonetheless, there are things that inevitably they didn't get to. Some of that could be the fireplace, for example. And that is always a problem. That's always an issue, that law enforcement may be a step behind the people who are trying to clean up and trying to hide evidence. So that is definitely a point, Annie K. Beth A asked me about whether Fotis went to the other house early in the morning so he could change the license plates without being seen. They're very possible, and would have been in the dark, and that would explain why he wanted to do it there. Although still, I guess if Michelle is in on it, I don't see why he has to go there to do it. Couldn't he just do it at his house? But in any event, I'm not really sure. Let me pull that out and go back to my questions. Oh, I probably lost my spot. Okay. So yes, I did lose my spot, but I'll find it again. Not to worry. I will find it again. Okay, let's see. Here's one anyway. I'll start here and go down in my bad if I just missed you. I don't know how to say this. Mantishaya maybe said, was the phone that connected to her car ever found? And wasn't the car found in gear? It was found in reverse with the keys in it. I don't remember about the keys, but it was found in reverse. I think it was not running. It may have been out of gas, actually. If not found, maybe somebody found it, picked it up, and connected. Maybe, but then I guess they took that phone because they didn't turn it in. There was never a phone found, but that's an interesting thought. But why would it connect? Maybe if they found the phone, turned it on, and then took it off with them and never turned it into law enforcement. That's as good an explanation as any, frankly. I'll count that. Connie wants to know where I'm from. Originally from Alabama. Aussie Sandy wants to know what is the max sentence she could get. Although I haven't been in Alabama in a long time, but that's the original if that's what you were asking me. Aussie wants to know what is the maximum sentence she could get. As I understand it, and I'm not a Connecticut lawyer, but this is what numerous outlets put out. The maximum would be 50 years, 20 related to the homicide, 10 for 2 other charges, and 5 for 4 charges and 10 for another. Yes, that's it. 5 for 4 charges and 10 for another. So somewhere they could all be run concurrently and it would be less than 20. Or they could all be added on top of each other and it would be 50 if you put it all together. That's what the Connecticut newspapers are saying, and I accept what they're saying. I will say, too, I looked at the statutes and I agreed that's what it looked like to me as well. Any idea when Kent's trial is? No, but am I curious, Hopester? Good question. I'm really curious about that. I really am unclear about what the case against Kent Maywinnie is, but I would be interested to know. Agnieszka asked me, what about the 2 ponchos? That was a fascinating piece of information because they found it wasn't technically, one was a poncho because it had a hood, but the other one was just a trash bag, originally clear with 3 holes in it. So it could be used like a poncho. And that evidence never really sort of moved to the forefront. They certainly never suggested that was worn by people who were doing something to get rid of the body. We never really got that fully kind of fleshed out, but there were 2 of them. And that was something that law enforcement pointed out, that there were 3 holes made, as if 1 for a neck, 2 for arms, that would be why you would put a 3rd hole. Why would you put that in a trash bag? So that was exactly what they were talking about. Let's see. Okay, Denise wants to know about psychics who have weighed in on her location. I don't know. I don't really know whether if anything's been done on that. I do know law enforcement looked. They could not find it. Belle Moon asks, Kent left the house at 8:40 a.m. after the call from the Greek friend. Where did he go? Good question. I don't know. We certainly weren't told about that in this trial. It could be that law enforcement knows that because they, for example, may have tracked his phone, but there were some issues with his phone. He had gotten rid of his phone, as I recall, and remember how he broke his phone and got a concussion at the same time and therefore couldn't remember and had a new phone. So I don't know what they were able to figure out. Marlon also asking the question about the 50 years, and then Michelle answering 50 years. Jackie asking, did the friend Clara say outside court when the verdict was reached that she was with Michelle on that day? I'm wondering when she was present. Jackie, good question. And she was with her, and there was testimony because Clara actually spoke at trial. She actually testified. That was in the morning. One of the important things that Clara offered, as well as some other witnesses and some other people, was the fact that Michelle is not the person who went down in New Canaan and murdered Jennifer on the morning of May 24th. She was out and about doing things in the city of Farmington or in and around Farmington, and she was seen by various people, spoke to various people. Was it simply setting up an alibi? Who knows? But she actually was there, was doing things. So that includes she was with her friend Clara at the shop that Clara ran, and the shop was selling some of the rugs that Michelle was importing and selling through them. So We Photo Gal, Lisa had the same question about the psychic. We Photo Gal asked if perhaps he cut her clothes off so the body would disintegrate in water and not be noticed with the clothes. I don't know. I really remain confused about that. You would think that they would have looked for any sort of chemical or anything, but they probably did look for a chemical that would dissolve the body, and they didn't, I assume, find that, or they would have given us that sort of evidence. That would have been really important to the jury, I believe. Paper Chaser asking, why didn't Michelle make a deal and tell what she knew if she was really in on it? What did she have to lose? Paper Chaser, either she's a very high risk taker and she thought she could get off and therefore wouldn't give anything, or she was really innocent and she had nothing to give. Those are your two options in the way of thinking of it, I believe. So, but that's a great question. Why would she not just say, here's where the body is? It could be too that because Fotis is no longer around for her to turn evidence on, that she didn't have that option anymore. But law enforcement gave her that option 3 times. And either she deliberately chose to ignore it or she had nothing to give them, because they interviewed her 3 separate times. And certainly by the second and third, they were pushing hard, saying, we really need you to answer and give us something. Give us something. This is your big shot. This is your chance. And she didn't give them anything they considered to be sufficient. Kathy B., what time did Kent leave for Jefferson Crossing? Somebody had that up earlier in the chat. It was 8:30-ish, 8:30, 8:40-ish. I don't remember the exact number, Kathy. Darice asked me, did they ever check the 600-foot cliff behind 80 Mountain Spring? I don't know. I don't know whether they checked that or not. Certainly they showed pictures of it, didn't they, at the trial, that we could see that it was kind of up on a bluff and over. There was a big drop off there. But I don't think we had any information about them searching there. I know that we did get some evidence that they searched the ski pond, which was the place where they did water skiing, and they searched that. They dragged it. They brought dogs in and weren't able to find anything there. Let me, oh, thank you, Annie. That's very nice. I appreciate you're saying that. She says, I deserve an award for my coverage. Thank you, Annie. And Mama Pinks is Mama Pinks is telling us that Hannah Gutierrez has been found guilty for the Rust movie set killing. That was an interesting case that ran, unfortunately, kind of while we were doing our Troconis case. But that's another one. Will you be interested? Put it in the chat if you are. Are you going to be interested when Alec Baldwin goes to trial? Because that obviously should be the next step in it, unless he strikes some kind of plea deal, which I think is unlikely, but we will see. Okay, I'm seeing lots of people putting in about what they want to see. Chad Daybell, lots of people saying Chad Daybell. Good. I'm glad you're interested in that too. Lindy Bali says, did he cut off her clothes to dismember her body? Lawsy, I have it's all very, here's the thing. There is no good explanation for cutting that shirt and bra up the middle. You can't think of an explanation that, that made things better. There is no better explanation that comes with that. It's something that you just don't even want to know. It's something bad. That's my read of it anyway. So I'm seeing, good. Y'all are putting lots of questions in. Deanna asking about the Howington trial. I don't know that one. I'll have to do a little research, see what that's about. I really do appreciate your recommendations and thoughts on cases you want to cover. So thank you. Atticus wants to know if the police will actively still search for Jennifer. And I'm honestly guessing probably not. I imagine they did what they could at the time. If someone gave them a tip and it had some reason behind it, some factual basis, yeah, maybe they would. But I don't think that it would be something that they would go out and do on their own. I think they've completed their investigation. They've done all they plan to do, absent brand new, really specific information coming in. I mean, goodness knows they'd love to find that. Carol asking, Kent only stayed with Michelle for an hour, and where he went up after that, did he maybe meet up with Fotis to deal with Jennifer? I guess that's possible. I don't know if they were able to get data from his cell phone about his movements because of the fact that he said his cell phone had been damaged. So what if he drove down to New Canaan? We don't know, but it would have taken him an hour and a half to get there. So he wouldn't have had a lot of time. And Derek Rosa case. Okay, I don't know that one either. Boy, I have a lot of cases to consider. Thank you so much. Did they find Jennifer's shoes or pants? No. I think that's strange, don't you? I mean, I don't know. I find that strange. Why did they not find those as well? And it could well be that he went to several trash cans that they didn't get to. And they went to the ones where they had some video, and that's where they were actually able to pull something out. We'll do two more questions. Tess just plain has questions. I know how you feel, Tess. She just put a bunch of question marks about there. I can relate to that, Tess. Mr. Betsy asked about, what about the Crystal Rogers case? Yes, we have done a number of videos on the Brooks Howe Crystal Rogers case. There has been a new development where one of the two who were also imprisoned along with Brooks Howe, one of them is saying he had a deal. He was supposed to be given immunity, and the prosecution went back on that. He shouldn't be in jail. So that's going to be interesting to follow that. That's a very interesting case. A lot of nuance and detail to that. There's a lot not known. So I think that constitutes our 2 more. I am really looking forward to reading your comments about the cases you want to cover. I want to thank you so much, all of you who come night after night, who like the videos, who subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. We go live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank Marlon and Mama Pinks who moderate for us. Our chat is the best chat on YouTube, and they are the reason why, along with you, because y'all are a really nice group. So I will see you Friday at 7 p.m. to jury, and so you can get a pretty good look at it too. Red blood-like substance on it. He said it was even wet and leaking everywhere. That was a quote. Zip ties, a razor blade. Why were these items there? And in the back window is a bobblehead of Alec Murdoch going back and forth.